A really good place to start is at the beginning. I'm just curious, what sparked your interest in cybersecurity and how you really got started in this field.
Yeah, sure. So I started undergrad in computer science, and to be honest, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I went to school really to play football in college, and that was my goal. And I ended up getting hurt and had already signed up for computer science, so I just stuck with it and and went with it, and found out that it was something I really loved. And really, it only took a few weeks of classes to get into the security side of things as well. We I had a professor in the very beginning who said we were learning about things like variables and functions and just basic computer science concepts. And he said, I need to be able to sit on your keyboard when I run your program and it shouldn't break. And I had no idea what he meant by that. And so he kind of gave us some background, like this will prevent security problems. This will make sure that, we have good code quality. We don't have issues down the line. And, I was like, well, the program's accepting 1 through 5 as input. Why would anyone put anything else in there? And so I stayed late after class and I asked him for some more information, and he started going into this security concept of buffer overflows and other types of, input validation issues you can have when you write code. And he and I just kept chatting about it. And, I went home and did some more research, and I kept asking those questions as we go through different concepts, like what is the security implication of this? And eventually it just became something I started doing on my own, and I just immediately fell in love with it.
Yeah. So you were doing this in your spare time then too? Just fooling around coding things?
Yeah. He gave me some resources to look for, different kind of security focused programming content. And that's where I focused.
Okay. So then how did you bridge from there to your first job in security?
Yeah, so I continued to kind of focus on security during outside of classwork, and as it came closer to times to get an internship, I started looking for information security internships and landed one with a kind of corporate gig as an information security co-op, and we really just took it from there.
All right. Did you have other jobs before you got into cyber that you were like, I absolutely don't want to do this? This made you, steer in the direction of cyber. You don't want to go that route.
That's funny. I mean, growing up, I worked on a farm down the road, and that was definitely a dirty job. As soon as I could start working, I went working for a masonry company. So, I guess maybe that influenced me to look for like a desk job versus those more manual labor efforts there. So, yeah.
What did you do on the farm? I'm just curious.
Oh, everything from throwing hay to, sweeping up all the stuff that ends up in the barns, everything.
All the fun stuff. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Um, that's interesting. I read that you enjoy woodworking now. And I'm curious, so you miss some manual, I guess it wouldn't be manual labor, but some of that manual work that you had to miss it enough to pick up that hobby, right?
Yeah, in information security, we spend a lot of time obviously making meaningful progress for our organizations, but at the end of the day, the fact that nothing happened is a good thing. and there's not a lot to show for that effort. And when I get out of work, I like to do something with my hands and really have like a tangible result to what I spend my time on. So I just find that enjoyable. It's kind of meditative. You can just focus on one thing and lock in and
Yeah.
cool out of it.
Yeah. What kind of things do you make?
Oh, all kinds of stuff, from like coffee tables to shelves to even like pergolas outside, whatever,
Oh, yeah.
whatever a friend or a family member needs, I'm always down for it.
That's awesome. Do you do wood carving too? I actually tried to pick that hobby up once and it was not successful.
No, I wouldn't be successful either. I'll be honest. My wife usually does the finishing touches to all the things that we make because she's the artistic one. She's the, definitely more artistic than I am for sure.
Well, you guys are a like furniture producing team then.
Exactly.
All right. All right. So, cool to know these things about you and what you enjoy outside of cybersecurity. I want to get back to cybersecurity. Obviously, that's why we're here. When you told that story about your professor, and you also mentioned that you really enjoyed, coding and programming. That you said you wrote your first buffer overflow. I just want to know what you found exciting about it. Was there something that you could identify that really sparked your, intrigue, or what was it?
Yeah, I guess I've always gravitated towards kind of these like tough mental challenges, like puzzles, games like chess, things like that. And something about, I guess, going to that kind of first buffer overflow example, there was really nothing fancy about the exploit development side of things, but not knowing where I was really going with it and just kind of learning on the fly, it was a lot of just beating your head against the wall and, learning as you go. And then once it finally works, the thrill of that, like getting that first root dance down, the thrill of that success really just drives that passion to kind of continue going deeper.
Okay. So then where did you wind up focusing once you knew cybersecurity is for me, this is where my passion is, this is where I'm going? How did you wind up focusing? Because there are so many different areas of cybersecurity you can get into. What drove you in the direction that you went, and where was that direction?
Yeah, it's funny. So coming from a computer science background and having a little bit of exploit development, nothing fancy whatsoever, but a little bit of exploit development experience, I really wanted to focus on the offensive security side of things. And I had some opportunity to do that and enjoyed the work. I enjoyed finding and poking holes in things and breaking into systems and things like that. But it was a little bit demoralizing because, you keep doing these things over and over and you keep having success. It's like, where are the defenses to actually prevent this sort of thing from happening in the first place? And it forced me to kind of, step back and look at this like, if we're constantly successful on the offensive side, what can we do to help that defense protect those systems a little bit better? And that's when I just switched gears entirely and fell in love with the blue team. And that's where I really wanted to focus on, making security operations better, making that kind of the protection side of things a little bit better to make the attacker's job harder. And that's where I've stayed ever since. That's where I want to stay for the rest of my career.
Awesome. Now, I had the pleasure of speaking with some of your colleagues at SANS, Eric Conrad, Seth Meisner, and they both kind of gave me some information on how they got into their field, what drove their passions. Cool that you actually mentioned to me earlier that they're some of your mentors, and I'm just curious, like, how they influenced your career. They also said, blue team is challenging. I want to do something I'm challenged for the rest of my life. So if you're going to do something for 30 years, why not be challenged? Do you have a similar outlook, or do you think that they influenced your career, I guess, more explicitly?
Oh, absolutely. Those two guys have had a tremendous impact on my career. That I've been so fortunate. I have so many mentors that I could thank, and to take this entire recording to get through all of them. I've just been so fortunate and so lucky to have just great people look out for me, and certainly I want to pay that forward as I can. Those guys, what I really admire about those guys is that there's nothing that can stop them, right? They're not like, they didn't come into this world as just InfoSec geniuses. They came in it like everyone else and have just powered through. And I've seen them kind of come up against technology that they're not familiar with, or, new types of attacks, whatever it might be. And they're just not going to stop. They're going to continue, and they're going to beat that wall down until they have mastered that concept or that skill. And it's just inspiring to see folks kind of take that approach, like, you're not going to win, I am. And that's really a kind of mantra that I've tried to emulate in my own career as well.
That's really cool. Were they part of the reason you got into teaching, or I guess how how did you get into teaching for SANS? What was the genesis of your teaching career?
Yeah, so I actually went through the SANS master's program, the information security engineering program, and I took a few SANS classes before that. And when I took my first SANS class, I was pretty new to the field, and I went into it was the 542 class, web app pen testing, and it was day one. I wasn't very familiar with the content, and at the end of the day, I just felt like I got kicked in the teeth. It was so much content, you know, so valuable in terms of just what I was receiving. And then I was like, wow, I have to go to bed. It's like 6 o'clock. I have to go to bed. I'm so tired. And I woke up the next morning and I was like, I can't wait for more. And I was like, these two things should be contradictory. And, I'm here wanting more. And I was hooked from that point on. And so I joined the MSISE program, which was a really great experience. At that point, I felt like I was pretty technically competent in my role. And, I was a decent engineer at the time, but I was like the engineer that you would kind of keep in the basement. Like, don't let that guy talk to the executive, going to show some, code or something like that they don't care about. And what that program really forced me to do was like expand my horizons and get out of that comfort zone of, the tech stuff's great, but once I can relate that technical content to some business impact and explain that risk, I'm not going to be as successful. And that program really forced me to get out of the comfort zone and focus on those less comfortable aspects and really grow in those areas.
And so for those who don't know what the MSISE is, it's the Masters of, maybe you can,
yeah,
I know this. But...
it's the Masters in Information Security Engineering.
That's what I thought. All right, that's what I thought. So then through those, challenges that forced you to get out of your comfort zone, did you discover new passions or anything that you were surprised that you discovered through that exploration of the different disciplines?
When I first started the program, I thought I would be happy being that engineer who kind of stayed in my cube and just did heads down work. And it really forced me to get out of my comfort zone with this kind of public speaking course. It was the first thing we did, and I absolutely hated it. And it was so valuable because it, again, forced me to get out of my comfort zone. And from there, we had to go to conference presentations where I did a talk at CDI and then at Network Security. And I was terrified going in. I was like, I don't really like public speaking in the first place. And, I just had this imposter syndrome of these people who are in this talk are going to know more than me. They're going to just, think this is a ridiculous topic. And I was terrified going in. And both times, just the most amazing thing happened where I got through it. Nothing bad happened. Yeah, sure, I was a little sweaty at the end of it, but nothing bad happened. And people would come up to me and they'd be like, this is awesome. I couldn't put these two different concepts together. The way you laid out your talk and the way you explained it really just made things click for me. And that was my spark for becoming a SANS instructor. I found so much value in sharing something that, sure, I had to work through it and I had to learn it myself. But at that point, I thought it was just kind of a normal thing, and realizing that there are these pieces, these disparate pieces that I can put together in different ways to explain concepts, and that can help folks get a better grasp of it. And the how rewarding that was in terms of having someone come up to me and say, just thank you for sharing that. It just changed how I'm going to approach this problem was just incredibly powerful. And even though I still didn't like the public speaking aspect of it, it really sparked my journey towards becoming a SANS instructor.
So I'm curious then, how have you learned anything really interesting from your students that maybe you didn't expect to learn? Like, I feel like I often hear from instructors, and my mom's actually a first grade teacher, so not that this is the same thing, but says, that they often learn things through their students, and a lot of times it can be kind of surprising. Has there been any situations where that's happened for you?
Oh, countless situations. I like to say, on day one of any course, this needs to be an interactive discussion. Students will learn just as much from the other students and the content as they will from the instructor, and vice versa. Honestly, I feel like I'm almost cheating at this game where I get I certainly get to add to the content that I'm delivering as part of the SANS course, but at the same time, I get to kind of, leech from all these different experiences and all these different anecdotes and things like that from people who have tried things different ways. And I feel like I'm cheating the system, and I get just this aggregate view of how people are dealing with these problems. And I feel like I'm always learning, just every time I teach, just countless things from people taking the course as well.
So then you're an instructor, you decided to then write a course. Can you tell us about why you were like, I'm going to do this thing now, take on a whole new challenge? What encouraged you down that path?
Well, I saw a need for really automation in general, and security operations teams are generally understaffed, overworked. They're dealing with burnout. It's a constant barrage of alerts and triage of different incidents. And I don't see that problem being fixed from a human resources perspective anytime soon, with how many millions of open InfoSec jobs in our industry. And so I feel like automation is one of the strategic paths we can go down to help us at least alleviate that problem. And so automation was something I always like to focus on. And when I would teach SEC530, the Defensible Security Architecture and Engineering course, automation is something I would like to harp on a lot. Like, we're going to cover this concept. Here's some PowerShell that I wrote to help us automate that task. And folks seem to really gravitate towards that. The automation aspect of it, of certain types of tasks, just makes it a little bit more bearable. And so, with that experience and kind of that passion, I saw a need, and that's when SANS actually approached me on a PowerShell course. They said, "Hey, can we write a more security operations focused, blue team focused PowerShell course?" And that's how it all started.
Nice. So most instructors have to propose a course. But you kind of got approached from SANS the other way around. That says something about your skill level and value, I would say. But so you created 586, which is called, what is it called again?
It's called Blue Team Operations Defensive PowerShell.
That's what I thought. All right. So what do students need to know about it? Why, who is it really valuable for? What type of roles might find it the most useful? How can it help people? What can help them do?
Yeah, so far, we've run the course a few times, and we've had all kinds of different backgrounds come through the course. Certainly blue teamers, kind of security operations staff, managers of those teams, but then even developers and sysadmins have come through the course. And I've had just the fortune to get this awesome feedback that the course is really providing the value and the covering the topics that they want to learn about. And so really what we do with 586 is we start from the basics, right? What is PowerShell? Why should we use PowerShell? Why should this be something we focus on? And then how can it help us, once we understand those fundamentals, how can it help us from a blue team perspective? How can I take something I'm going to do as a security operations person or just a general blue teamer and use PowerShell as this kind of force multiplier, right? Take something that I would otherwise do manually, automate it across my enterprise. And so, we've just seen a ton of value in terms of the feedback we're seeing in terms of, what people are doing with the output of 586. And again, I just feel so fortunate to get this feedback from folks like weeks after they take the course.
Awesome. That's absolutely great to hear. I know you've talked several times today about blue teamers, and you want to be a blue teamer till you die for the rest of your life. I'm curious, how would you define, what makes for a successful blue teamer? Are there certain character traits, personality traits, skills that are required?
Yeah, I think it really does take an all-around kind of skill set, right? So not just being focused on network security or endpoint security, but having a good holistic understanding of how different pieces integrate, right? So how do my endpoints talk to my servers and applications? How do I do things like network segmentation? What is the business impact of all of those things? Because certainly, proposing some of these controls, you might get looked at like you wear a tinfoil hat from some executive, and understanding how to kind of sell that business impact and that the risk reduction as well, I think is really important. So uh, I think to be a really good blue teamer, it requires that kind of all around skill set.
That is something that Justin Henderson and Ismail Valencia, two other of your colleagues on the SANS Instructor roster, they have kind of coined that term, all around defender, and they produce lots of content around that series. And I do feel like it resonates so nicely with people because it's this concept, like you said, of picking a little bit of this, a little bit of that, knowing things at such a broad range that you can tackle these problems that may just surface. And like you said, there's always something new in security. So I love that you are all on the same page with us. It kind of shows that you might be onto something.
Hopefully.
Yeah. All right. So I think that we are always trying to do here at SANS is encourage the next generation. You mentioned you got into teaching because you want to share the knowledge, help pay it forward. And I guess if you were talking to someone that was considering entering the cybersecurity field, maybe considering blue team, cyber defense, and I guess do you have any advice that you give them, or I guess any lessons learned from your experience that you'd be like, hey, don't do this, do this instead?
Oh yeah, I have plenty of those don't do this stories. As some general advice, what I like to tell folks is pick something that you find really interesting, that you can find some passion in, and go deep into it. Right. So go deep to the point where when I'm Googling something, I don't get results anymore. And that's kind of the sweet spot, in my opinion, to do some original research, to go deeper than what you can find out there publicly just on the internet. And I like to do that for a few different areas to find out what really resonates with me. And maybe it's AppSec to start, and then maybe you get into forensics or some other aspect of information security. And I never see any of those efforts is wasted, because it's going to make you that stronger all-around defender. The fact that you've gone so deep into this one area of information security, it's going to make you stronger overall, even if you found that that's not what I want to focus my time on. Like, forensics is not for me. I'm going to go ahead and focus on something else. I'm better off because of that time and effort that I spent there. And then it's almost contradictory, but on the other side of that, I like to tell folks, like, don't stay down at that low level. Always bring it back up to like a 50,000 foot view and think about business impact of whatever that is you're doing at the lower level. And never lose sight that the awesome technical things we do have to be translated into risk reduction to really sell that within our organizations. And so we really kind of, to be really successful, you kind of have to be able to do the low level technical work, but also speak at the higher level so that non-technical people can actually follow along with what you're saying. And I've several kind of don't do this stories around talking too technical to executives that I can share as well.
Maybe you could share one of them with us. Is there an example that was just like, you still think about it at night when you're trying to fall asleep?
There is. So I had an opportunity as a kind of entry-level person in the field. I was working for an organization, and we found a flaw in their main website, and it was a cross-site scripting bug, and there was a brand new browser exploit out at the same time. And so I got a meeting with their executive team to basically explain why this should be fixed. And so I fired up my little attack laptop. I set another laptop in front of one of the executives, and I started talking through this exploit. And I'm showing them HTML and how with this form I can inject arbitrary code that will execute on the client side, which makes this so interesting from a client side attack perspective. And I go through this whole thing. I pop a shell on their machine. I take a webcam snapshot. I'm logging keystrokes. doing all this stuff that I think is really cool. And I look up and everyone in the room is just on their phone and they're reading email and texting or whatever it is that they're doing. And I realized at that point that I had just completely missed the mark. Like, they were expecting something that illustrated business impact, and I just showed this technical walkthrough of something they don't care about at all. And so that is one that I don't regret it because I learned from it, but I just missed the mark there. And it's made me stronger, I think, knowing that I can't do that sort of thing with executives. They don't care about that low level stuff. And so I have a better understanding of how to kind of translate that into just true business risk.
Awesome. Great story. I love when you can I love when people say, I learned from it, I don't regret it, because I think that's so important, especially in cybersecurity. It's so important to realize, like, a mistake that's not it for you. You learn from it, you move on, you improve. So that's really great advice. Great story. So I'm curious, are there any, I guess, surprising stories or surprising facts about you that maybe your students would be, shocked, not shocked, like, but they would be surprised to know about you?
I'm totally an introvert at heart. And being a SANS instructor, you might have heard this from other SANS instructors too, that, like, it's a different version of us that you see in the classroom than who we really are. We come out just excited and passionate and really seeming like total extroverts, but then, like, the lunchroom after, or like the lunchroom in between breaks and stuff like that is like dead quiet, or people just kind of chatting on their own. And it's like, I'm a total introvert. I can bring it out when I have to and be that kind of passionate, inspired and kind of energetic speaker when I need to, and certainly I do that. But if you ask my wife, she'd be like, I don't know why you're teaching. You hate talking to people.
I totally get it. And actually, I read recently that there's this thing called an ambivert, where you can actually, like, transition between the two depending on, the circumstance or what you need to do. I feel like that you might be an ambivert, and I feel I can very much relate to that, because I get to talk to so many cool people, and I think if you met me, you might think I was an extrovert, but no, I think my ideal would be sitting, reading a book, hanging out by myself. The sense that I get that there's the instructor personality or persona, and then how you are at home behind closed doors, if you will. All right, well, that's very interesting. I'm curious. So I've said I'm curious a lot because I am. I'm really glad to get to know you. When you are thinking now how to move forward, like, you've done a lot of really exciting things already in your career. You're here at SANS, which of course we're ecstatic about, and you wrote a course and launched this course. And what's next, though? Do you have things on your to-do list or on your bucket list, if you will, that you want to accomplish that you haven't quite gotten there yet?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm definitely proud of the accomplishments I've had so far. I by no means feel like I'm done. Really, my goal with 586, and I like to usually have more measurable goals than this, but my goal is for 586 alumni to basically have measure in terms of, speed to resolution of security incidents, better prevention capabilities, and really be able to scale that across their entire enterprise. And I want to start seeing, these measurable impacts from 586 based automations to really making a tangible difference in what those organizations can show from a security perspective. And again, I wish I had a better measure for this, and I could really hone in on what that measurement would look like. But in general, I think that's my goal, right? Is to scale out this PowerShell knowledge and skill set to really show tangible results for organizations. Like, if you come to 586, we're going to have the ability to hone in on these various automation capabilities and really scale out protections to a level that we haven't been able to do so far.
Awesome. I know. So a, a lot of, so when as I've been talking to you, I've kind of been thinking to myself, like, you definitely seem like you belong in this field. Like, this seems like it's for you. I mean, I like to ask people sometimes, just because sometimes it varies dramatically. But when you were a little kid, what I want to be when I grow up, what was that for you? I'm guessing cybersecurity professional, engineering, and none of that was probably in your vocabulary at that point.
Nope, nope. I think firefighter was one, police officer, uh, marine biologist was in there for a while,
Oh.
doctor. I was all over the place, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I'm just so lucky that I found security, and I really do love it.
That's great. I know so many people don't know, especially when you're young. But I love the firefighter, police. That it's like, it tells something about who you are as a person. Because if you wanted to help people as a police officer, help people as a firefighter, you want to keep people safe. Now you're helping keep people safe, but from a cyber virtual perspective. So it's a little bit different, but the same idea of helping people. Do you think that you relate to that idea of being that positive force for good?
Yeah, absolutely. I never really thought of that. Like chaining all those things together is all about helping people. So that's a cool insight, and I never really thought about that.
Well, now
But
you
yeah,
know.
that out of all the things I do day to day, I think the times I help people are the most valuable to me, and it's I think what I have the most pride in terms of thinking back on my accomplishments. It's sure I could write a cool script that does something cool technically, but there's some satisfaction there. But when I can actually look back at someone I helped and show what positive change I made for them, that's what keeps me going for sure.
Yeah. Well, this has been a really great conversation. I like to kind of end my interviews with people by asking them, like, is there something that man, you wish I should have asked you about? Like, why didn't you ask me about? I really wanted to get this across or tell people about, because there's just so many facets to who you are as a professional, as an individual, that there might be some other things that I just didn't even think to ask.
Mm. You know, one thing I've been thinking a lot about lately, and it's kind of apparent with burnout in socks and things like that, is maintaining balance. And it's something I try to focus on a lot. Family, personal life, all these other things we have going on beyond security, and uh, exercise, other things that we can do to kind of help build a better balance between this day-to-day grind of trying to keep my organization safe and what I'm doing outside of work. And I think finding a balance, whether it's regular exercise or meditation or just spending time with the kids or your family or whatever it might be, I think that's really important. And I'd like to see more emphasis on that for sure throughout different organizations. And I get to work with a lot of professionals from all kinds of organizations, and I think that's something that should be emphasized for sure.
Oh yeah, especially I think since COVID, there's been this renewed focus on taking care of yourself. It's not just about taking care of, your organization, although that's very important. You can't help anybody unless you're helping yourself first. And so I feel like I've heard that quite a bit in the last year and a half, that you have to strike this balance, because otherwise you're going to burn out, and then you're just going to add to the problem. Right, with security, we have a lot of people burned out, and we don't have enough people working there to begin with. So um, I think that's great insight. That's very, very important to bring up, so thank you.
Sure thing.
All
Yeah,
right,
if
so
you're burnt out, you're not doing any good for your team. You're not doing any good for yourself. So, take
right.
care of yourself first and foremost for sure.